The day I closed on the house should have been simple. I sat with the keys in my hand and thought about how small victories stack up. After years of saving and moving, the brick house on the corner finally belonged to me. It was modest, steady. I pictured mornings with coffee on the porch, my child playing in the yard, dinners I could cook without rushing. I felt proud. She arrived before the celebration began. My ex stood on the porch with a calm face. "Our child deserves half your success," she said. "I'll take you to court to prove it." The sentence landed like an accusation I did not expect on my happiest day. We had been separated for over a year. The split had left wounds, but we had moved on enough to avoid drama. Still, within hours, people around the block had noticed. Neighbors glanced as she parked. Her tone was measured. Her message was not. She named lawyers and hinted at evidence she claimed to have. After she left, my phone filled with messages. Friends forwarded versions of her story. People I barely knew sent cautious questions. Rumors moved fast. I did not want the first night in my house to be filled with whispers, but I also would not step back. That evening, I opened a box I had packed during the separation. It held receipts, old texts, and a few screenshots I saved when arguments felt important. I had not kept them for revenge. I kept them because memory softens and paper does not. When I spread those pages on the kitchen counter, a pattern appeared. Dates matched. Transfers showed clear timestamps. Messages that once seemed like heat now formed a timeline. Nothing dramatic. Just ordinary proof that contradicted the story she was telling. I did not want court or custody battles. My priority was a stable home for our child. But standing in the rooms of the house I had bought, I realized preparation matters. I began to organize the papers, copy messages into a folder, and print bank statements that showed the timeline. Her texts grew sharper. She requested half the down payment and suggested joint custody, as if it were simple. Each message sounded practiced. Behind the righteous language, I felt a strategy forming. Sorting documents felt like mapping a route. It was calm work, the opposite of shouting. I labeled the receipts, highlighted dates, and stapled the screenshots together. I kept the house as a place to sort facts, not feed fights. Life outside kept moving. Kids kicked a ball in the street. Mail was delivered. The normal rhythm made the conflict feel almost unreal. I slept with the keys beside me the first night, not out of fear, but because the house felt newly important. Weeks later, the first letter from a law office arrived. I opened it at the kitchen table and set it beside the stack of papers. My choice was no longer about proving I was right. It was about protecting the life I had started inside those walls. Calm and steady, I began to plan. Not with heat, but with facts. For the first time since the separation, I welcomed the small, ordinary proof I had kept. It might be all I needed to stop a story built from assumptions and accusations. I would answer when the time came, clearly and without theatrics. The house would be the place where the truth could be kept safe. I did not want revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted justice for my child. The court date came faster than I expected. I spent those weeks settling into the house, painting small spots on the walls, mowing the lawn, and trying to keep life steady for my child. But even while doing those simple chores, I could feel the pressure building. My ex kept pushing her story online and through mutual friends. She acted like she had already won. Some days I wondered how someone could twist things so boldly, but I didn't say much. I focused on gathering proof and keeping my head clear. The house slowly turned into more than a home. It became a place where I spread out documents after my child went to bed, where I sat with a notebook and wrote down each incident in clean, simple lines. My lawyer listened quietly when I first brought him the folder. He reviewed the messages, the transfers, the notes, and the old screenshots. He tapped a few pages and said, "These matter more than you think." That gave me a small sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Meanwhile, my ex acted like the court was an audience waiting for her speech. She posted things that made me look careless. She hinted that I didn't support our child. She tried to make it seem like her arrival on the day I bought the house was pure timing, not a planned move. Friends who trusted her version avoided me. I stayed silent. Silence can irritate someone who expects chaos, and it clearly annoyed her. She kept messaging me, not yelling, but always pushing, always framing herself as the struggling parent, while acting like I had everything handed to me. She said the house changed the balance. She said the court would correct it. She didn't know what I had saved. I kept remembering the afternoons during our breakup, the long messages she sent admitting she didn't want joint custody, that she needed time for herself, that I was taking on most of the responsibility. Those messages were calm and honest. Now she was pretending they never happened. As the court date got closer, I noticed small things in her tone. She slipped in lines meant to provoke me. She wanted me to snap. I refused to play along. Instead, I focused on my child. We spent weekends at parks, on simple grocery runs, and movie nights on the couch. I didn't talk about the case around them, never let it interrupt our time. It kept me grounded. The night before the hearing, I sat at the dining table with the folder open one last time. Everything was arranged in order: photos, receipts, bank statements, and messages with clear timestamps. I wasn't trying to build a trap. I was just setting the record straight. Still, a quiet part of me knew this might turn her plans upside down. When I arrived at the courthouse the next morning, she was already inside, talking with her attorney. She didn't look nervous. She carried herself like victory was already written for her. I took my seat and waited. Her lawyer began with a polished speech about fairness, shared responsibility, and how my sudden financial advantage changed the dynamic for our child. He painted her as the stable one, the constant parent, the one who needed the court's help to ensure balance. Then the judge turned to me. I didn't give long explanations or emotional lines. I slid the folder forward and described each document in plain words. I pointed to the old messages she thought I had deleted, the ones where she said she wasn't ready for joint custody, the ones where she admitted I had handled the bills, the ones where she agreed to the arrangement she was now denying. Her face changed slowly, like she finally saw she had walked into a room she didn't prepare for. When the judge read through the pages, the room felt quieter than before. My ex kept her eyes on the table. Her attorney leaned toward her more than once, whispering in a way that didn't look confident anymore. I stayed still, letting the documents speak for themselves. The judge asked a few questions, nothing dramatic, just enough to understand the timeline. He paused on the messages where she clearly wrote that she didn't want shared custody back then. He read the part where she said I could take full responsibility while she figured her life out. Seeing her words printed with dates and times made the story clear without my needing to explain much. Her lawyer tried to recover. He said situations change. He said her previous messages came from a stressful period. He tried to shift the focus toward my house purchase, hinting that my new success put her at a disadvantage. But the judge didn't move from the facts. What turned the moment was a short message she sent months after our split. In it, she thanked me for keeping everything stable for our child and said she appreciated that I covered the major expenses. It wasn't dramatic, just honest. And it didn't match her new story at all. The judge placed the papers down and asked her if she wanted to clarify anything. She said she didn't remember writing those things. Her voice stayed calm, but her hands tightened around the file she brought. She kept insisting she didn't mean them that way. Her lawyer looked frustrated. He asked for a short break. They stepped outside, and I stayed in my seat, watching the dust float through the courtroom light. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't triumph. It was more like steady relief, the kind that comes when truth stops being pulled around by someone else's story. When they returned, her lawyer tried a softer approach. He said maybe she had worded things poorly in the past. Maybe she didn't expect those messages to be used in court. The judge didn't seem impressed by that angle. He asked again why she had claimed I never supported our child when her own messages showed the opposite. She didn't have a clean answer. Her claim for half the house money weakened right there. Her attempt to argue that she deserved part of the down payment fell apart when the judge saw the bank statements showing every cent came from my savings long after we'd separated. She tried to argue that she influenced my progress. Her lawyer added a few lines about emotional support. The judge didn't give those ideas much weight. Then came the custody part. She wanted shared custody now, claiming I had blocked her involvement. But the messages showed she had stepped back on her own. The judge asked why she waited so long to request more time with our child. She said she was rebuilding, but the timeline didn't support her story. Her lawyer kept trying, but the room had already shifted. The judge asked for my final statement. I kept it simple. I said I wanted stability, fairness, and a safe environment for my child. I said I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I wanted the truth recognized so we could move forward without confusion. My ex pressed her lips tightly together. The courtroom felt heavier for her now, like she was realizing how much of her plan depended on me having no proof. When the judge ended the day's session, her attorney avoided eye contact with both of us. She walked out fast, not saying a word. I didn't chase after her. I didn't need to. The truth had already started undoing everything she tried to build, and the judge hadn't even made his final ruling yet. The days after the hearing felt strangely quiet. My ex didn't message me as often, and when she did, the tone had changed. Her long, confident statements were now short lines that circled the case without saying much. It was clear she didn't know how to shift her story anymore. I spent that time focusing on home life. My child liked the new house. We set up their room together, picked out a simple lamp, and painted one wall a soft color they chose. Small moments like that reminded me why I was fighting for stability. I didn't want conflict. I wanted a place where life could grow without chaos. But even in that calm, I knew the final ruling was coming, and she was desperate for some kind of advantage. A week before the next hearing, I got a message from a mutual friend. My ex had been trying to gather people to speak on her behalf. She wanted them to say I had ignored her, to say she was the parent doing all the emotional work. But they refused. Some were tired of being pulled into her conflicts. Others had seen the truth with their own eyes. That same friend also said she had attempted to twist an old disagreement into a story about neglect. It wasn't surprising. Whenever she felt cornered, she tried to rewrite the past. But this time, her story had clear limits. Too many people had watched her step back from parenting during the breakup. Too many had seen me take on the daily responsibility without complaint. Before the next hearing, my lawyer and I met again. He reviewed everything one more time, made a few short notes, and said, "She built her entire case on a version of the past that doesn't match reality. Just stay steady." I could do that. Steady felt natural. When we entered the courtroom again, she looked tense. Her attorney tried to start with a claim about changed circumstances and shared emotional involvement, but the judge stopped him. He said the evidence already showed the history clearly. What mattered now was what served the child best. Her lawyer then tried to focus on my house, arguing that since I now had greater resources, she deserved more access and financial support. But the judge pointed out that she had never requested more involvement until I bought the home. He asked her directly why she waited. She struggled to find a simple answer. She settled on saying she felt more stable now, but the judge reminded her that stability should come from actions, not timing that lined up with someone else's progress. Then came a moment that turned the whole room. My lawyer handed the judge a printed timeline I had made. Nothing fancy, just dates and events written in plain lines. It showed when she stepped back, when I took over, and when she sent those messages thanking me. It also showed the exact day she returned with demands, the day I bought the house. The judge studied the page for a long moment. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't react sharply. He simply said, "This pattern is clear." Her attorney tried again to redirect the narrative, but the judge had made up his mind. He said it wasn't fair for one parent to disappear when life is hard and then return only when the other parent succeeds. He said a home does not become community property just because one person envies it. My ex stared straight ahead, holding her folder so tightly the edges bent. When the judge announced the preliminary decision, her plans fell apart more quickly than I expected. He granted me primary custody. He denied her request for financial claims tied to the house. He ordered a review of her previous statements for clarity and consistency. She didn't look at me when the session ended. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in months. Not a victory rush, just a quiet awareness that truth had done what it needed to do. In the days before the final ruling, I assumed things would settle. I thought she would accept the direction the case was going and focus on rebuilding her relationship with our child in a steady, honest way. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, she tried one last push. Late one evening, I got a long message from her. It wasn't angry like the old ones. It was filled with careful sentences, almost rehearsed. She said the court was being unfair. She said I was using old moments against her. She said she had changed and deserved another chance. She even suggested we settle things privately, away from lawyers, and reset the balance. I read the message twice, but didn't reply. There was nothing to say. The truth wasn't something I could rewrite to ease her discomfort. I wanted stability, not another cycle of promises and confusion. Silence was the cleanest answer. On the morning of the final hearing, the courthouse felt colder than usual. When I walked in, she was sitting beside her lawyer with a fixed expression, trying to look collected. But her eyes showed she knew the outcome was no longer in her hands. The judge entered, reviewed the paperwork once more, and went straight to the point. He summarized the evidence in plain words. He acknowledged her effort to return to the child's life, but said actions over time mattered more than sudden demands. He said a home purchased by one parent after a separation couldn't be treated as shared property. He said stability had been shown through daily responsibility, not big statements made in stressful moments. She stared down as he spoke, not interrupting, not offering excuses. Even her attorney looked resigned. Then the judge delivered the final decision. He granted me full primary custody, with a structured visitation plan for her. He made it clear that any future adjustments would depend on consistent actions, not shifting emotions. He denied every financial claim tied to the house. He also ordered both parties to follow a communication guideline, stating that all major decisions must be documented to avoid future disputes. She didn't say a single word when the judge finished. She collected her papers as if she were afraid they might fall apart in her hands. As we stepped out of the courtroom, she finally looked at me, not with anger, more like someone realizing the story she tried to build had collapsed under its own weight. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. She walked away without turning back. I didn't follow her. I didn't feel the need to. The court had done what I could never do through arguments. It sorted truth from performance. It showed that steady, simple proof can undo months of planning built on half-truths. Outside, the air felt lighter. My lawyer shook my hand and said, "You handled it well." I appreciated the comment, but what mattered most was knowing my child would grow up in a home shaped by stability, not conflict. That evening, I picked up my child and brought them to the new house. We ordered takeout and sat on the living room floor, unpacking a few toys and talking about their upcoming school event. They didn't know anything about the court ruling, and they didn't need to. All they needed was a steady place, and I could finally give it to them. Later, when they were asleep, I stepped onto the porch. The house looked the same, but it felt different now, secure, protected, ours. I didn't seek revenge, but life has a way of returning what people put into it. She tried to twist the past to gain something she hadn't earned, and the truth caught up with her. Not through noise, just through steady facts and patience.